The Beverly Wilshire Hotel, Beverly Hills, California, November 1967. The lobby of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel at 9:47 p.m. on a Friday in November is operating at the specific frequency that luxury hotels operate at during the hour when dinner reservations transition into late evening arrivals, which is a frequency that appears calm on the surface but contains beneath that surface the carefully orchestrated chaos of dozens of staff members moving through choreographed patterns designed to make wealth feel frictionless. The marble floors are Italian Carrara, white with gray veining, polished to the specific reflective sheen that expensive stone achieves when it is maintained by people whose only job is to maintain it. And the lighting is neither bright nor dim, but exists in the carefully calibrated middle range that makes everyone look slightly better than they actually look, which is one of the many small things that luxury hotels do that their guests never consciously notice but would absolutely notice if it were absent. The sound is the sound of wealth at rest, which is not silence, but something adjacent to silence. The quiet murmur of expensive conversations happening in expensive spaces. The particular acoustics of voices that are confident they will be listened to, because they have always been listened to, and beneath that, the near subliminal rustle of fine fabrics, moving against fine fabrics, silk and wool and cashmere, the materials that signal status through texture rather than obvious display. The smell is specific and manufactured, not quite perfume and not quite cleaning solution, but something that has been designed by people whose job is to design how luxury smells, a scent that suggests flowers without being floral, suggests cleanliness without being antiseptic, suggests money without suggesting anything as crass as trying to smell like money. The 5 security guards working the evening shift are stationed at positions throughout the lobby that have been determined through years of operational experience to provide optimal coverage of entry points and traffic patterns, positions that allow them to see without being obviously seen, to maintain presence without being intrusive, because the security at a hotel like the Beverly Wilshire is supposed to exist in the same way that plumbing exists, essential and functional and absolutely invisible until something goes wrong. Thomas Brennan is the head of this security detail and has been working hotel security for 11 years, 6 of them at the Beverly Wilshire, which is long enough to have developed this specific quality of institutional authority that comes from knowing a space completely, from understanding not just the official rules that govern a space, but the unwritten social codes that actually determine how the space functions, which is knowledge that gives him confidence in his ability to assess who belongs in this lobby and who does not, which is an assessment that he makes dozens of times per shift, and which he has learned to make quickly and which he believes he makes accurately, though the accuracy of this belief has never been seriously tested, because the people he has decided do not belong have always left when asked to leave, which has reinforced his confidence in his judgment rather than revealed the limitations of it. He is 42 years old and 6 feet tall and carries himself with the specific, careful posture of someone who understands that his physical presence is part of his professional toolkit, that standing a certain way and moving a certain way communicates authority that does not require verbal explanation. And he is wearing the Beverly Wilshire security uniform, which is not quite a suit and not quite a military uniform, but something in between, charcoal gray with minimal insignia, designed to signal authority while maintaining the aesthetic standards of the hotel, which does not want its security to look like security guards, but rather like well-dressed men who happen to be maintaining order. The other 4 guards are younger, ranging from 26 to 34, and they defer to Brennan in the automatic way that people defer to someone who has seniority and experience and the confidence that comes from both. And they have learned from Brennan how to assess the lobby, how to read the subtle signals that distinguish guests from people who are attempting to access the space without having paid for that access, which is a thing that happens regularly at hotels like this. People wandering in off Wilshire Boulevard to use the bathrooms or meet someone in the bar or simply experience for a few minutes what it feels like to occupy a space that costs $45 per night for a room, which in 1967 is enough money to communicate that this is not a space for everyone. And they have learned from Brennan that the way to maintain the hotel's standards is through polite but firm intervention when someone who does not belong attempts to occupy the space. Intervention that is calibrated to remove the person without creating a scene, because scenes are the thing that luxury hotels fear more than almost anything else. The disruption of the carefully maintained atmosphere of effortless wealth and comfort. Bruce Lee enters the lobby at 9:51 p.m. through the main entrance on Wilshire, 4 minutes before he is supposed to meet his student and friend Sterling Silliphant in the hotel bar to discuss the script for a film project that Silliphant is writing. Pushing through the brass revolving door that weighs precisely 847 pounds and is balanced so perfectly that it turns with almost no resistance, entering from the November evening, which is 61 degrees, and dry into the lobby, which is maintained at exactly 72 degrees year-round. And he is wearing dark slacks and a dark jacket over a simple button-down shirt, civilian clothes that are clean and well-fitted but not expensive in the way that clothes need to be expensive to signal belonging in a space like this, not tailored, not silk, not anything that would make the staff of the Beverly Wilshire look at him and think immediately this person is a guest, and his hair is cut in the specific style he wears in 1967, slightly longer than military short, but not long in the way that hair is beginning to be long in Los Angeles in 1967, and he moves through the revolving door and into the lobby with the economy of movement that characterizes everything he does. No wasted motion, no hesitation, simply the direct path from the door to the interior. And he pauses 3 steps inside to orient himself, to locate the bar where he is supposed to meet Silliphant, scanning the lobby with a specific quality of attention that some people have and most people do not, the quality of noticing everything while appearing to notice nothing. Thomas Brennan sees Bruce Lee enter, and sees immediately that something is wrong, which is not the same as seeing what is wrong but is the initial assessment that his 11 years of experience have trained him to make. The pattern recognition response that happens when someone enters a space and does not fit the expected pattern. And what Brennan sees is a Chinese man in his 20s, 5'7" or 5'8", maybe 135 pounds, wearing clothes that do not cost enough, moving with confidence that does not match what Brennan's experience has taught him to expect from someone who looks like this, entering a hotel like this at this hour. Because the Asian guests at the Beverly Wilshire are usually older businessmen or diplomats, usually accompanied by handlers or assistants, usually wearing obvious markers of wealth, and Bruce Lee is none of these things, is young and alone and dressed in a way that suggests he is not a guest, and Brennan's immediate assessment, formed in the 3 seconds between Bruce Lee entering and Brennan beginning to move toward him, is that this is someone attempting to access the hotel for reasons that are not legitimate. Someone who needs to be politely but firmly redirected back to Wilshire Boulevard before he penetrates deeper into the lobby and creates a situation that requires more obvious intervention. Brennan signals to 2 of the other guards with a specific small hand gesture that the security team uses to communicate without guests noticing. A gesture that means converge on target, and he begins walking toward Bruce Lee from the right side of the lobby, while the other 2 guards, Michael DeVries and Robert Chen, begin walking toward him from the left. 3 vectors of approach that will arrive at Bruce Lee's position simultaneously, creating the specific geometric configuration that security personnel use when they want to contain someone without touching them. Presence as barrier, and Bruce Lee is not yet aware of this approach, because he is still scanning the lobby for the bar, still oriented toward his purpose rather than toward the possibility that his presence here is being assessed as a problem, and the 3 guards arrive at positions surrounding him, not touching but close enough to establish that his movement is now limited, that the available space has contracted, and Brennan says, his voice calibrated to be polite and firm simultaneously, the professional tone he has used hundreds of times. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you find something?" And the phrasing is deliberate, is the specific construction that allows Brennan to assess intention without making an accusation. Because "can I help you find something" implies that the person might be lost, might have entered the wrong building, might be looking for something that is not here, and it gives the person an opportunity to explain themselves or to leave voluntarily. which is always preferable to having to explicitly ask them to leave, and Bruce Lee turns to face Brennan and sees immediately what is happening, sees the configuration of the three guards, sees that he has been assessed as someone who does not belong, and his expression does not change, does not register offense or surprise, simply registers the information the way someone registers any information about a situation they are in, and he says, his voice quiet and clear, "I am meeting someone in the bar, a friend." And Brennan hears this and hears it as what he has been trained to hear it as, which is the standard response that people give when they are attempting to justify their presence in a space they have not paid to access, the claim of meeting someone. And Brennan has heard this claim dozens of times and has learned that it is usually false, usually a pretext, and even when it is true, it does not necessarily mean the person belongs here, because meeting someone in the bar does not make you a guest, does not give you the right to occupy the lobby, and he says, "Who are you meeting, sir?" Which is the next question in the sequence. The question designed to determine if the claim is specific enough to be verifiable, and Bruce Lee says, "Sterling Silliphant." And Brennan does not recognize the name immediately, because Brennan's job is to recognize the names of guests who are currently staying in the hotel, and Silliphant is not. Staying in a hotel is simply meeting someone in the bar, which means his name would not be on any list that Brennan has access to. And Brennan interprets this as confirmation that the claim is false, that Bruce Lee has provided a name that cannot be verified because the name is invented, and he says, his tone shifting slightly, becoming less polite and more firm, "I'm going to have to ask you to wait outside while we verify that." And this statement lands in the situation with the specific weight of an ultimatum that is pretending not to be an ultimatum, because asking someone to wait outside is functionally the same as asking them to leave. And both Brennan and Bruce Lee understand this, and the two other guards have shifted their positions slightly, have closed the distance by 6 inches, have established through proximity that the request is not optional, and Bruce Lee says, "I am 4 minutes early for a meeting. I will wait inside." And the statement is not aggressive and not defensive but simply factual, the assertion of intention, and Brennan's response to this assertion is irritation, the specific professional irritation of someone who is given a clear instruction and had that instruction declined, which is not something that happens often in his professional experience, and which he interprets as disrespect, as a challenge to his authority in a space where his authority is supposed to be absolute within certain boundaries, and he says, "Sir, if you do not wait outside, I will have to escort you outside." And the word escort is doing specific work in this sentence, is the professional euphemism for physical removal. And Bruce Lee hears this and understands that the situation has escalated from assessment to confrontation, that these men have decided he does not belong and are preparing to enforce that decision physically. By now, the other two guards have joined the configuration, making it 5 men in a loose circle around Bruce Lee. 5 men who are all larger than him, all wearing uniforms that signal institutional authority, all positioned in the specific way that security personnel position themselves when they are preparing to put hands on someone. Weight slightly forward, hands loose and ready, and the lobby has not gone silent, but several nearby conversations have paused. Several guests have turned to watch. Because a circle of 5 security guards surrounding a single person is unusual enough to warrant attention, unusual enough to be the beginning of something, and Brennan is aware of being watched, and is aware that this situation needs to resolve quickly and quietly, that the scene he wanted to avoid is beginning to form, and this awareness makes him more committed to ending the situation immediately, to removing Bruce Lee from the lobby before more guests notice, and he takes a step closer and reaches for Bruce Lee's arm, not grabbing yet, but moving to grab, the precursor to the escort. And he says, "Let's go, sir. We can sort this out outside." And his hand is 6 inches from Bruce Lee's arm when Bruce Lee moves, not backward and not in any direction that suggests retreat, but simply offline. A minimal shift of position that makes Brennan's reaching hand close on air where Bruce Lee's arm was supposed to be. And the movement is so economical and so precisely timed that Brennan does not initially register that he has missed, expects his hand to make contact, and is already beginning to apply the grip pressure when he realizes there is nothing to grip, and he looks at his empty hand and then at Bruce Lee, who is now 14 inches to the left of where he was. And Brennan's irritation converts into something sharper, converts into the specific territorial aggression that some men feel when their physical intention is frustrated, and he says, "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." And he reaches again, faster this time, more committed, and Bruce Lee shifts again, the same minimal offline movement, and Brennan misses again. And now the other four guards are moving, are attempting to close the circle, to limit Bruce Lee's options for movement. Because 5 men surrounding 1 man should be able to contain that man regardless of how quickly he can shift position, should be able to limit the available space until there is nowhere to shift to. Michael DeVries reaches from the left and Robert Chen reaches from the right, and the other 2 guards move to cut off the rear angles, and Bruce Lee is surrounded with no apparent exit, and 5 sets of hands moving toward him simultaneously. And what happens in the next 6 seconds is difficult for the people watching to parse, because it happens faster than their experience has taught them things. Like this happen, faster than the physical confrontations they have seen in films or on television, which are choreographed to be visible, to be readable. And what Bruce Lee does is not choreographed for visibility, but for function, is the product of 10,000 hours of training in how to be where attacks are not, how to make space where space does not appear to exist. And his body moves through the contracting circle like water moving through a narrowing channel, not forcing, not opposing, simply finding the path of least resistance and flowing through it. And DeVries's hand closes on the sleeve of Bruce Lee's jacket, but cannot grip, because Bruce Lee's arm is already withdrawing, is already moving to a position where the grip has no leverage. And Chen's hand reaches for Bruce Lee's shoulder and finds shoulder, but cannot establish control because the shoulder is turning, is rotating away from the grip pressure in the same moment the grip is applied. And Brennan reaches again, frustrated now, reaching with both hands to grab and contain, and Bruce Lee's right hand moves, not fast in the way that looks impressive, but fast in the way that is functional, and makes contact with Brennan's extended wrist, not a strike, but a redirect, a touch that changes the vector of Brennan's reach so that Brennan's own momentum carries him forward past where Bruce Lee is standing, carries him off balance, and simultaneously Bruce Lee's weight shifts and his left foot moves behind Brennan's right ankle, and the combination of the wrist redirect and the ankle placement removes all of Brennan's structural support, removes it so completely that Brennan does not fall but collapses, his body going down without any protective reaction, because the time between standing and floor is too brief for his nervous system to organize a response, and Brennan hits the marble floor flat on his back with the specific sound of significant mass meeting stone, a sound that carries through the lobby the way sudden loud sounds carry through quiet, expensive spaces with authoritative clarity, and the lobby goes completely silent, the conversations that were pausing now stopping entirely, because what just happened was visible enough that everyone watching saw it even if they did not understand exactly what they saw 5 security guards attempt to remove 1 person, and saw that person put the head of security on the floor in a motion that was too fast to parse into component parts, and the 4 remaining guards freeze in the specific way that people freeze when their understanding of a situation changes suddenly and completely, when what they thought was happening is revealed to be something entirely different, and they are frozen not from fear, but from the complete absence of procedural guidance for what to do when 5 of you attempt to escort 1 person, and that person puts your supervisor on the marble floor without appearing to try. The silence holds for 4 seconds, which is a very long time for the lobby of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel to be completely silent on a Friday evening, and then Sterling Silliphant enters from the bar, having heard the sound of Brennan hitting the floor from 40 feet away, enters and sees Bruce Lee standing in the center of a circle of security guards, and sees Brennan on the floor, and understands immediately what has happened, Not the specific details, but the general shape of it, which is that the hotel security has attempted to remove his guest and his guest has educated them. And Silifant is a screenwriter who has won an Academy Award and is working on multiple studio projects and is known to the Beverly Wilshire staff because he conducts meetings in the bar regularly. And he says, his voice carrying across the silent lobby, "Bruce, there you are. I'm sorry I'm late." And he walks directly to Bruce Lee and extends his hand, and Bruce Lee shakes it. And this simple action reframes the entire situation in front of the 24 people watching, establishes that Bruce Lee is not an intruder, but a guest, not someone being removed, but someone being greeted. Brennan sits up slowly, his face red from exertion and embarrassment, and the specific shocked disorientation of having been put on the floor by someone half his size. And Silifant looks down at him and says, "Is there a problem here, Thomas?" Using Brennan's first name, establishing familiarity and therefore authority, and Brennan says nothing for 2 seconds while he processes the question and formulates a response that will not require him to explain what just happened. And he says, "No, Mr. Silifant, just a misunderstanding." And Silifant says, "This is Bruce Lee. He's working with me on a project. I'd appreciate it if your staff could be aware he's a guest." And Brennan nods, still sitting on the marble floor, and says, "Of course, my apologies, Mr. Lee." And Bruce Lee extends his hand to help Brennan up, extends it without hesitation or superiority, simply offers assistance. And Brennan takes the hand, and Bruce Lee pulls him to his feet with the specific, effortless leverage of someone who understands how bodies move and how to move them efficiently. And Silifant and Bruce Lee walk to the bar and sit at a corner table and order drinks and begin discussing the script that Silifant is writing. And the lobby gradually returns to its normal sound level, conversations resuming cautiously and then fully, and the 5 security guards return to their positions. And Brennan walks to the security office and sits at the desk and thinks about what just happened. Thinks about the specific moment when his hand reached for Bruce Lee's arm and found nothing. The moment when his understanding of how physical confrontations work was revealed to be incomplete, and he will spend the rest of his shift thinking about it, and will go home and continue thinking about it, and will tell his wife about it 3 days later when he has processed it enough to put it into words. Will tell her about the small man in the lobby who moved like water and put him on the marble floor without anger, without effort, without any of the aggression that Brennan had always believed was necessary for one person to dominate another physically. And in the bar, Bruce Lee and Sterling Silifant discuss the film project, and discuss the nature of martial arts, and discuss the difference between the performance of violence and the reality of it. And Silifant asks Bruce Lee if confrontations like what just happened bother him, if being assessed as not belonging in spaces like this bothers him. And Bruce Lee says that it does not bother him, because people's assessments are based on their experience, and their experience is limited, and when their experience expands, their assessments change. Eddie says this without bitterness, without anger, simply as an observation about how people learn, which is through confrontation with information that contradicts their existing understanding. And Silifant writes this observation down in the notebook he carries, because it is the kind of observation that belongs in the script they are developing. Thomas Brennan will work at the Beverly Wilshire for 7 more years, and will eventually become the director of security for the entire hotel, and will implement new training protocols for his staff that emphasize assessment over assumption, that teach the difference between how someone looks and what they are capable of. And he will tell the story of the night he tried to escort Bruce Lee out of the lobby to every new security hire. We'll tell it not as a story about being defeated, but as a story about learning that strength is not size and authority is not uniform, and the world contains more than your experience has prepared you for. And some of the security guards he tells this story to will understand it, and some will not. But all of them will remember it, will carry it with them, because stories about the moments when what we think we know is revealed to be insufficient are the stories that change how we think, which is the only way anyone ever learns anything that matters.